little midweek drive and dish NBA talking the upcoming Christmas Day games, which I'm going to start right off the gate and fire shots. The NBA Christmas Day games are better than the NFL Christmas Day games.
Oh, that wasn't the shot that I was expecting at all, and I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It's the first time I think they've had to compete in a few years directly.
Did we
Um,
ever? I mean, I feel like the math says we have, but I don't remember doing the podcast when they competed.
oh no, we definitely did because the
Yeah.
Eagles played on Christmas the year they won the Super Bowl,
Oh,
and that
right.
was not that we are definitely doing it 5 years ago. So,
You're right.
yeah, the NFL, I mean, they, I guess, loaded them all apparently on Christmas Eve. Like the Eve slate is
And I'm
loaded,
cool
but
with that. Like, let's go
yeah, I'm
for it.
fine with that too because I mean, I'm gonna watch hoops all day long, and I associate Christmas generally with being a hoops day. Like I swear, just not because I do the podcast, but um, yeah, I mean, I'm football's
There's
definitely on the back burner for me.
there's no way the NFL went, "Oh, this is the NBA's day. Let's stay away," right?
No,
There's 0%
no, because the
chance.
NFL is king in America. Like as much as
Yeah.
I love the NBA and wish that the NBA had that clout where they could get their own day, like no, there's no planet.
Yeah.
The NFL, I always go back to the stat. I don't remember if it was 2021 or 2020, but the top 50 broadcasts in the US, 48 of
Football.
them were NFL broadcasts. Like it's regular season games will outrank the highest NBA finals game. Like
Yeah.
I obviously think the NBA globally, especially, I would argue, has a much bigger fan base just because I don't think like the NFL has fans outside of America, but it's pretty largely an American sport. I mean, the only other area where it's organized and played right now is in Canada with the CFL. Um, where obviously basketball between China, between Europe, between I mean, even like the Middle East with Israel,
Yeah.
Iran's got a league. There's just maybe more global that way or global emphasis that way. But no, here in America, like the NFL is never scared of the NBA or
Right.
anything for that matter.
Right. So, we did want to talk about some of the streaking teams before we get into it. Obviously, one of those streaking teams is the Knicks, but we are going to cover the Knicks a bit in the Christmas Day game
Yeah,
breakdown.
we're not jobbing them, I swear, because they are on the longest streak out of anybody right
Yeah.
now. They've won 8 in a row as of recording this. We're on Wednesday, December 21st. So, we will get to the Knicks. We promise they will get their due, but yeah, we got to start in a little bit of a different direction. We're not doing who's balling, who's falling, but in this case, it's two separate streaks, and we will start with the
Mhm.
good before the bad. And that's Brooklyn. Brooklyn's won 6 in a row, and I mean, obviously, this is a team that specifically with this season of the podcast, we have really harped on, I feel like to say the least. There's been a lot going on in terms of off the court distractions, in terms of on the court figuring it out. But very quietly, besides winning the 6 in a row, they're 9-1 in their last 10. Really, since Kyrie Irving has come back, they've turned it on and got things going. I mean, Kyrie hit the buzzer beater the other night against
Can
Toronto.
I but and again, I'm going to be a hater right now.
Okay.
Have you seen the teams they played in their last 10?
I have.
The
It's kind
team
of
the team they lost to, the Celtics, that makes sense. The rest of it's kinda soft.
yeah, but I'm not gonna fault a team for beating teams
I
that they
know,
should be
I know,
beating too.
I know.
Like, that's the thing, is like the schedule is how it gets made, and if they're supposed to be a contender the way that I think a lot of people have pegged them to be, then you need to win those games, right?
Yes, I completely
My
agree,
bad. I didn't realize I would have timed that better. I saw the sneeze there. That was a great mute and everything. And that was the worst time. I mean, the video won't see that, but that was the most unfortunate timing because it was right as I finished my sentence, of
I was
course.
like,
But
maybe he's got a few more words in him,
no,
but
it was
yeah,
right at the end, like
it's
right
fine.
where it was punctuated.
But,
Um,
uh, but I will say, like, it is gonna be telling, right? The Nets, when this episode comes out, this game will have already happened. The Warriors, they play the Warriors tonight. They play the Bucks right before Christmas, and then they play the Cavs right after. Like those 3 games will tell me more than the win streak that they have right now, you know?
Honestly, I don't think the game against the Warriors is going to tell me anything. Everybody knows Steph Curry's hurt right now. What am I going to take away from the
Yeah.
Warriors?
But still, like it's a better team than Wizards, Pacers, Pistons, Raptors. You know what I mean? And again, I know the Warriors are so much different without Steph. Um, so maybe I'm taking a little bit of a jab at some of those teams by saying that. But like I think at least if you want to take the Warriors out of their Bucks and Cavs will tell you more about where the Nets are in this process, um, than the win streak games have.
Yeah, I mean, really though, in terms of, I mean, I guess we'll see it later, but a couple of things that are boding well is really the, I mean, the offense figuring it out. They're all the way up to eighth right now in offensive rating. Effective field goal percentage, they're number one in the league right now.
Nice.
You know, KD's been great all year, but I mean, it really has been Kyrie. Like, I don't want to just pin it all on one guy coming back, but it certainly has looked a lot more explosive. I mean, if you're looking at their points wise, because I mean, it gets balanced in terms of the point perspective. Like, KD's averaging 30 a game, Kyrie's at 26, and then the next highest is Nick Claxton, all the way back at like 11.6.
Mm.
You know, Nick Claxton's a good player, but we know the limitations there for sure. Obviously with Ben Simmons too, it's become with Ben, the defense has ticked up. Like that's the biggest thing is Ben is always going to be a prove it type player come the playoffs. If he can share the floor as it gets more half court oriented, if the spacing will just totally be wonky, but the concerning part at the beginning of the year to me was that he just didn't look engaged on the defensive end. I mean, even if I put my homer hat on as a Sixers fan, like Ben Simmons was objectively a phenomenal defender. Um, you know, Seth Curry's been back a little more. You know, he's starting to get healthy a little bit. Obviously, Joe Harris is another one too that's rounding into form a little bit more now. He missed a couple of games to start the year, so um, it definitely feels like they figured it out a little bit more. And again, obviously, when you get a star player like Kyrie back, that'll kind of help make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure. And then on the other side of trending teams, one of the teams we just mentioned, actually, because the Nets beat them recently, is the Raptors. They have now lost 6 straight. They are 2-8 in their last 10. They have only won 3 games on the road. Have the wheels fallen off?
Well, I do want to give a shout out real quick before totally moving on from
Okay.
the Nets from to TJ Warren mostly, just because TJ Warren didn't play basketball for so long. And he's been I mean, it's good to have him back on the court. And again, there's a long way to go from him being bubble star TJ Warren that we saw all the way back with Indy. But I mean, the fact that he missed basically, I mean, it was more or less 2 full years at this point since we've seen him on the floor healthy. It's good to see him back contributing. Like he's been a part of that Nets rotation coming back for sure. Like they definitely have to be thrilled about that because I mean, it's a flyer type deal with him at this point. But yeah, switching to Toronto, Toronto's in a really interesting spot, man, because they gave the Sixers hell. Well, let me rephrase that. Pascal Siakam gave the Sixers hell the other night. I mean, and he's been doing that all year long. Like Pascal Siakam looks like he's pushing a top 10 player in the league. Like he was third team all NBA last year. Like his brilliance from last season has carried over this year for sure. It's everybody else. OG Anunoby's been great defensively. The offense still leaves a little bit to be desired. Um, they have this weird. So the Raptors were always this weird mix, right? It's like you have a bunch of great young guys who you think you can
Mhm.
build around. You've got a pretty solid, like Pascal Siakam's again your main piece, but you've got a bunch of good players surrounding him. Fred Van Vliet, obviously former Finals MVP, a guy who's been really good here the past few years, namely. Um, and then they've got the mix of vets, right? It's the Thad Youngs, it's the Kem Birches of the world. And I mean, they were scrappy and they were giving everybody hell last year. And you knew with them being coached by Nick Nurse that they would always give you a good fight night in and night out. Defensively, they have plummeted this year. I mean, they don't even look remotely the same as we've seen them on the last few years. Because, like, even after Kawhi left, they were still defending their asses off, and it just doesn't feel like they have it all. They've also been ravaged by injuries for what it's worth. Like, I do think, I would love to see. I don't have the games total that they've lost to injury in front of me, but they certainly have to be one of the more injured teams in the league. I mean, I'm pulling up right. Yeah, I think Christian Coloco is the only one who's played all their games so far. OG's at 27, Scotty Barnes is at 28. Gary Trent's missed time. Precious Achua basically hasn't played all year. So yeah, I mean, there's been a little bit of that as well. But it does feel like you're kind of because you're not going to win anything this year. Like I don't think anybody expects, even if everything went right last year, that Toronto was going to win the Eastern Conference. And so it does kind of like the young guys make sense, but you do wonder what some of these vets are doing here. Like they do, it does feel like they would fit more on a contending team. And, maybe it is time to start entertaining a few of those decisions. I mean, you're not going to move Siakam. You don't think twice about that unless you just get some King's ransom. But even then, I don't think it's worth it given his age. Um, but for some of the other guys, especially the older ones, I think you start to take a look at what this is because they are. I mean, they're trending in the wrong direction. They're down to, they're a 10th holding right now, just a half game up on the Bulls and a game and a half up on the Wizards, who we talked about are 1-9 in their last 10. So I guess the Raptors aren't much better, 2-8 in their last 10. But yeah, I mean, even as Orlando rises, like if this team finds himself like again, they were the darlings getting up to 5 last year, but if they find themselves on the lower end of the play-in game, I think you got to start to ask some questions here pretty quick.
Yeah, and like you said though, they have talent that if they wanted to make a move or do something with the draft, like you've got players and there's been rumors around the league about how many people want OG. So you would imagine that the demand is there if you're willing to part with those guys or those potential players. Some of the older guys maybe grab you some stuff as well. So it was always one of those things where we said it was great that you have all these young guys, but you always felt like they needed one more star. And I think Toronto's thing was they thought Siakam would blossom to that star. It seems like he has or is. I just don't think it's enough anymore. Like you need someone else too, right?
Well, yeah, they haven't the second guy like Scotty Barnes isn't there yet.
Right.
OG hasn't developed enough offensively to be that guy. I mean, even Van Fleet. Van Fleet's numbers are down from what they've been the last couple of years. So yeah, I would agree with that right now. I think their problem is kind of too much Siakam and not enough everything else. I mean, Van Fleet's only averaging 18 points a game. Um, I mean, Gary Trent Jr. is at 17, which isn't bad at all. Like he's given them a little bit of a spark there, but yeah, I mean, again, a guy like Chris Boucher, for example, is a big part of their rotation. Like he's 30 years old at this point. You
Mhm.
kind of wonder what the timeline is there. You wonder what like you do with an Otto Porter, for example, with a Thaddeus Young. Like those are guys that you would imagine contending teams would go for. Like, I mean, we saw Otto Porter last year do it on the Warriors. But you could see making trades for that. I still think OG, if he gets moved, is going to take a king's ransom. Like, not I mean, what were you saying before we were talking about this? Like somebody was talking about how he needs a Donovan Mitchell type haul. Like I think that's
No, no,
insane.
no. They were saying that if he gets traded, don't be surprised if it is a Donovan Mitchell type haul. Was the ESPN graphic that was floating around this morning on social media. So like,
That's ridiculous, right?
well, personally, I thought the haul that was for Donovan Mitchell, although now it looks like it's paid off in more ways than one, but I remember when it happened, we were like, "Dang, was that too much?" So, like, if we
Oh, I
thought it
didn't
was
feel
too
that
much
way
for
for
him, are we gonna feel the same thing with OG?
See, I don't remember feeling that way for Cleveland. I thought if the Knicks were going to give up what they were rumored to give up, it would have been too much just because it wouldn't have put them in a position where they could win and they'd be
Yeah,
really hard pressed to be able to add anybody after that. Cleveland, I loved it for because Cleveland was in the rare scenario where you could move some of your young guys because they just weren't a part of it last year. I mean, they moved Markkinen, Markkinen is obviously playing too way better in Utah than he was in Cleveland last year. I mean, he was a good part of that rotation, but he wasn't sharpshooting like he is out there
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Sexton was just like that was just a timing thing, right? It's that Sexton broke out, so you knew he was kind of good, but then just like he got hurt, and
yeah.
everybody else kept the ship afloat, and obviously contended and played well last year. So, no, I love that move for Cleveland at the time, and I think, but I don't think they got fleet. Like it was a hefty fee, but like Donovan Mitchell's a good player. OG Anunoby again, a lot of what he does well doesn't show up on the stat sheet. So I think that there's for sure an underrating of him overall, especially around the league. I mean, again, he's averaging 18 points a game, almost 6 rebounds a game. But I mean, I don't know, man. Like, as much as Donovan Mitchell, that feels ridiculous. Like, when have you ever seen OG Anunoby play as well as Donovan Mitchell has?
Well, that's the thing. Like we'd have to, I'd have to go see. I mean, just the like you said, defensively.
That's it. That's the only factor. And I
Yeah.
don't think anyone would argue, but it's like, what are we talking about? Like Donovan Mitchell, I've seen him single handedly carry teams to the playoffs. OG Anunoby's not doing that right now.
No, but I would also argue he doesn't have to because the team that's around him, right? Like those guys. Again, I know the Raptors aren't in playoff contention,
Donovan
but
or OG?
OG,
I would argue that he needs to right now. If somebody needs to step up
right?
besides
But is but
Pascal,
but
the number two guy hasn't been there. He's supposed to be the number two guy in theory.
well, that's what I mean. Is like I don't know. This is Pascal Siakam's team, not OG's team. So like when I think of somebody that needs to step up, I don't necessarily think of OG as the guy to do it.
I don't necessarily think that OG is the guy who needs to play better too the most out of the Raptors, but if I'm giving up a Donovan Mitchell type haul, he
Sure,
needs to.
sure. No, I get it. I get it.
I don't know, man. Like I know we were all lower, including me. Like I'm not gonna sit here in front like I wasn't pretty low on Donovan Mitchell after last year, or lower than I would be for a superstar status player right now. Listen, he's balling out of his mind in Cleveland right now. Like those guys look like, I mean, they look like closer to the Milwaukee Boston tier of the East than I think they do to the rest of it with like Philly and Brooklyn and a couple of these other teams that are hanging around there.
Well, and I would say too, I'm just checking this to make sure the thought process is correct. Yeah. So I would say too, a concern with him is the past 2 seasons, we've only seen a little. Well, neither times has he cracked 50 games in a season. 2020 or the last two, we'll just say that
Yeah.
43 in 2021 and 48 in 21-22. So there is a little bit of concern there. Um, but it sounds like a lot of people think this guy can fit right into their team system. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean he's got to be a better player than Donovan, but if you've got multiple teams trying to get him, that's going to drive up the price tag.
You better be really close to winning a title and specifically need defense. And he better put you over the top if I'm going to give up Donovan Mitchell. Like that's a
That's fair.
big ask from me. And again, I like him, but you're right about that injury risk too. Like that's
Well,
definitely
not
not an
not
underrated element.
yeah, not giving up Donovan Mitchell, but giving up a similar haul that the Cavs gave to get Donovan Mitchell. Yes.
Yeah. So at that point, you're looking at first a good young player confirmed
Hmm.
and a good younger rotation player. Like, I don't know. That's
You
a
think
tough ask for me for OG Anunoby.
I have to wonder if like a team like the Warriors would try to do something like that. I guess it doesn't really fit, or if they don't even have the ability to do it.
I mean, they would have the ability to do it, I think, if the market is right. It's just I don't know
Yeah,
what the market is right now. If the market is 3 first rounders and 2 young players, and there's no planet where I'm moving for OG Anunoby. And in
yeah,
that case, they probably don't, honestly. Like, I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, not unless you're including Jordan Poole in a deal, but that would never happen.
No.
And so that kind of, puts you in a tough spot. But I am interested to watch them. If this keeps going south, I do think the Raptors are going to be a very, very intriguing deadline watch because a lot of their guys are good. Like that's the thing is they
Hmm.
have good players. They'll get a good value. And they don't have to fully tear it down. Like you said, you already have a bona fide star in Siakam in place. You don't have to go full process and like really try to. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like this is the year too. If you want to go in the tank, like going for him for Wembanyama, even again, Scoot
Yeah.
Henderson too. You got options. Like you should. They what if you're going to be bad? This is the year to be bad. Welcome everybody to this midweek edition, the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
Yes, and you can always find us on YouTube. We have a video version of the podcast, so you can always find us there. Just search Drive and Dish NBA.
Yeah, the audio's everywhere that you can find us: Stitcher, Google Play Store, Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon, TuneIn, all those places. Now, a word from our sponsors.
So we bring it back with the NBA Christmas Day games, and I thought it would be kind of fun to rank them. So let's start with what you think is going to be the least intriguing game of the Christmas Day game slates.
All right. Well, they're loading right this second. So let me start this
Well,
by
here,
saying the initial answer would
yeah.
be the Knicks game, but the Knicks have won 8 in a row
Oh,
into this. So I am instead much more intrigued in the Sixers or in the Knicks, I should say, than I would be. So here we go. All right, here we go, right in front of me. So you got Sixers, Knicks, Lakers, Mavericks, Bucks, Celtics, Grizzlies, Warriors, and Suns, Nuggets. I think for me, and maybe this is my Eastern bias going a little bit, I think Milwaukee and Boston is my one. I think that man, it's really tough because the West games are all good. Like Memphis and
Mhm.
Golden State and Phoenix, Denver, I think are both 2 and 3. I would say I'm going to put Phoenix and Denver at 2 just because Steph is not playing. I think that took a lot of steam out of that game. If Steph had been playing, I would have Memphis and Golden State at 2 just because there's spice there. Like, obviously, Memphis is playing great this year. Golden State's desperate to get some games. But so with that happening because of injury, I'll actually flip to Phoenix and Denver. I think that's a really good, top dogs of the West matchup, potential playoff matchup later on down the line. I got Memphis and Golden State at 3. I've got Lakers or no, I've got Sixers and Knicks at 4, and then I've got Lakers and Dallas at 5. I mean, the Sixers and Knicks, assuming that they win, I mean, I think they each have a game before then, but the Sixers and Knicks, I mean, the Sixers won 5 in a or I don't remember if they're at 5 or 6 in a row now, but
5.
either
They're at
way,
5.
they're at 5. So Sixers won 5 in a row, the Knicks have won 8 in a row. Um,
The
so
Knicks
that's
have
become a much
potential.
better matchup, obviously.
The Knicks, if I remember this correctly, the Knicks, if they win on Christmas Day and obviously win their game before it, I believe they have a potential to hit a 10-game win streak by winning on Christmas Day.
Yeah. Yeah, which would be I mean, listen, the way the season started, I think where everyone was with the Knicks, I mean, it's been
Mhm.
a pretty quick turnaround here. Like, the vibes around this team have changed quickly, particularly RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett's really gotten going, and that's big because, I mean, he's again, you talk about the most important guys to this franchise, he's definitely right there.
Yeah.
And give Jalen Brunson a lot of credit. Like, I think people and it's funny because they lost their pick today, the 2025 second rounder for tampering for Jalen Brunson, which I mean, you knew there was going to be something. Um, but this Knicks streak is not really. I mean, it's definitely softer per se, but there are a couple wins like the win against the Cavs, the win against the Hawks, just because of the spice that's always there anytime Trey goes to
Mhm.
MSG. I think the win against the Kings, like the Kings are playing great right now. It's impressive. Again, we'll see what they do against Toronto. They're playing later tonight. But no, I think the Knicks have I mean, again, the fact that they've turned this matchup significantly better, give RJ Barrett a lot of credit for turning it around, give Jalen Brunson a lot of credit. I mean, he's been the kind of the steady guy this year, right? Like he's been people killed that contract, and I think when you saw the number, it was very alarming, and you
Yeah.
go, "Oh, no, like, what on earth is this?" But when you realize he's paid to be the 13th best point guard in the league, like, I mean, this guy's averaging 20 almost 21 points a game right now and 6 assists, like, he's shown that he can play big moments, especially going back to the conference finals last year, but, you gotta give him a lot of credit. I like Emmanuel Quickly a lot. I think he's exactly what they need off the bench. Um, Obi Toppin's played some good minutes for them this year. If anything, the one who's struggled the most on the Knicks has been Mitchell Robinson, which kind of surprised me. Like I thought with him finally getting comfortable there, they gave him the big money contract. You would think that he would maybe kind of get more settled, but that hasn't really happened yet. And then Julius Randle's just been a little more he's just been more efficient this year. Like he's
Mhm.
not the bad Julius Randle that we saw last year. He's not quite the all-star level that we saw 2 years ago, but you're seeing way more of the good than the bad right now.
Yeah, they're a team that really have everything clicking, and it's one of those things where I think a lot of people wrote this game off at the beginning of the season, or maybe even like 2 weeks into the season, being like, "Well, this is gonna be a wash. Sixers are just gonna grab it," but it's not gonna be that easy, and the point spread's only 2.5 as of right now, so they think it's gonna be a really close game. It's still favoring the Sixers, but I don't know why we would do that right now. We've seen the surging hot Knicks, so
No,
you know,
well, wait a minute, hang on. And so this is the question is how much do you how much do you believe in the Knicks right now? I guess I'll ask you that question.
I believe that they're firing on all cylinders, and I get it that the Sixers are also right behind them on their own win streak. I guess it's because I'm a Sixers fan. I always just expect disappointment.
Yeah. Well, so it's
Is
funny because
maybe a
like
little bit of it.
and so they've really gotten better at rebounding, which is a stat that I know you love, but they've been the league's best rebounders over during this win streak. And really the defense. I mean, the defense has turned it around big time. Um, like I said, Randall's playing smarter. And again, seems energized on the defensive end. Brunson has played well on that end as well. Like, I don't know. Like you said, the Knicks are playing well right now. I mean, I'm homer biased. I'm gonna pick the Sixers. Like the Sixers are winning too, but like I can definitely see Doc Rivers doing something stupid at the end of the game and us blowing that game.
A weird stat to watch is the Sixers are 5-7 on the road, and the Knicks are 8-7 at home. The Knicks are actually 10-6 on the road, which is interesting. It is at Madison Square Garden, so maybe that comes into play with it a little bit. I don't know, but either way, that game, the Sixers Knicks, is the one that kicks it off. The next game, I guess, if we're just working down the line, is Lakers Mavericks. To me, I agree with you. Probably the least intriguing, surprisingly. And I think, other than the like watching Luca and LeBron play, there's nothing else
That's
to
it.
really get excited
No,
about.
that's it. You gotta hope Luka gives you a show. I mean, they're Lakers dealing with injuries, like we talked about Anthony Davis a little bit. Russ is out tonight. We'll see if he plays again.
Yeah,
Even like Austin Reeves was out the other night, where it's just kind of like one of the few like slivers of hope that you've had this year, and you can't even get going on that front. So
no.
yeah, I mean, I think again, just a lot of injuries, and like the Lakers stink. Like we talk about the Knicks being in this spot, like the Lakers kind of are the Knicks of the past in this spot right now. They're getting it off legacy.
Yeah, I agree. The getting in off legacy, and I think, well, no, I would say I think this game got in specifically because of a LeBron Luca matchup potential.
No, there's tons of star power. Like I understand why this game exists and why it did at one point. It's just the Lakers stink. Like that's it.
Yeah,
That's a sim. Like I'm watching LeBron score points because I want to see him break Kareem's record. Like that's essentially the only reason to watch the Lakers currently at this point.
I agree. I agree. So then, so that is actually the game that is right after. Like we said, that's the 2:30 game.
Yeah,
Then the games get fun. Then the games get real interesting.
real quick.
Milwaukee Bucks, Boston. I agree with you. Probably the number one game of the day. Two of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. I mean, we've been down this road before. Bad blood. Like, let's just run it back on Christmas Day, and I think that's going to be a really exciting one. And agree with you. The number one game of the Christmas Day slate, and has a lot of implications because these teams are most likely going to see each other down the line.
Well, and Boston's looked mortal all of a sudden. Like the
Yeah,
beginning of the season or the first quarter, they've just been this absolute juggernaut, like the
yeah,
best offense in league history. We knew what they would be defensively, but their offense is really ticked down the last couple of games in specific. And I think a lot of it, I mean, some of it you knew would happen when their role players just came back to earth. Like
yeah.
the Celtics entire bench, it felt like was shooting 50% at one point. Like you just don't think that's sustainable for an entire season.
Right.
I also think teams are just scheming them a little better. Like we know what the Celtics want to do. They want their guys getting like they take a ton of 3-pointers. Like I almost think that's encouraging teams to just jump passing lanes a little bit, and almost kind of try to play free safety. So you wonder if they start to adjust there. Like don't like again. I think the Celtics are fine. Like don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be all doomy and gloomy with it. Um, but yeah, they become or it feels like they're a little more mortal, you know what I mean? Like they were looking head and shoulders above even Milwaukee at one point.
Well, and I
Um,
wonder. I wonder. I mean, they are on a two-game losing streak.
yeah, both to the Magic.
Which
Magic took a home and home in the guard, or not even a home and home. They took two in the Garden.
do we think it's a little bit because maybe the um, Celtics are trying to figure out how to work Williams into the rotation? I mean, their point totals pretty low in the last two games when he's been back. I mean, 100 points, that's bottom 4 in the league. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. I know he's Williams only has 2 games under his belt, since coming back, and played 17ish minutes in both of them. So maybe there's something there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's looking too deep into it, but
Well, I guess the question is like because they're bombing so much, you just wonder if it's sustainable or not.
yeah.
I'm inclined to think it is because I mean, look, when they're hitting their shots, they look unbeatable. And I mean,
Mhm.
per Celtics blog, they're 12-0 this season when shooting 40% or better from distance.
Jeez.
Um, you know, we've seen what it can look like. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if that goes cold, it can get ugly fast. Like you have to have some semblance of offense other than just bombing away.
Yeah.
And you would imagine again, some of these role guys were going to come down for a better. I mean, across the board, everybody slipped. Like that's the thing. I don't think any player on the Celtics is shooting better than they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, especially Al Horford. Like Al Horford is like again, for some perspective, Al Horford in November was shooting 52.7% from beyond the arc. Al Horford is a
Nice.
good 3-point shooter. Like that is not sustainable remotely. I mean, all of them, like Derek White was shooting over 45%. Brogdon was shooting 54% in the month of November. Like, you just have to imagine that that would come back to earth, and I think it has a little bit. I also think Jaylen Brown has got to stop turning the ball over. Um, he just has this bad tendency where he puts his head down a little too much, and I think that that burns him sometimes. Like where he just because when Jaylen Brown is efficient, like I think he's one of the best players in the league, and like it gets to that point where like you even argue if he's as good as Tatum is.
Mhm.
But I mean, like there are moments with Jaylen Brown where I just see him drive into traffic, and I'm just like, all right, like we don't need to heat check all the time either. Like he just kind of he gets kind of tunnel vision a little bit in a way when he has the ball in his hands. It feels like.
Yeah. Well, and I think you kind of because it is your duo, you live and die with that, right? Um, the Celtics, by the way, with the spread, if anybody's wondering, are favored by 3.5. So still it's still a pretty close game, but regardless, I think it'll be the best one of the slate, like we've already talked about.
Well, and
So
you hope
then
you get
that.
Chris Middleton too, because they've got
Mhm,
I mean, he's out tonight and he's still coming back, like they're easing him back in, but it'll be good to see the Bucks at full strength against the Celtics for sure.
I agree. So the next game on the slate is Memphis Grizzlies, Golden State Warriors. We've already kind of talked about it. Probably one of the more exciting ones if everybody's healthy. Um, because this is actually the first time the Grizzlies are heading to the Warriors and playing them in their arena for the first time since the Western Conference semifinals. So there's a little bit of that going on, but obviously, I think the big cloud over this game is Steph Curry not being in.
Did you see Malika Andrews ask Ja Morant that the clip that's going viral right now? Where they asked him who he fears, and he just talked about Boston right away, and then they asked him the West, and what did he say? He's like, "No, I don't fear anybody in the West." Uh, what do you think? You like that, or you think it's too spicy?
Oh no, I love that. Come on, you got to take your jabs.
I love it too because they're in first place right now, and like here's the thing: I know the Grizzlies are all young. The Grizzlies have been in 3 straight playoff runs now at this point. Like, we
Yeah,
gotta stop giving the Grizzlies that young team, like, they haven't had their playoff battles. Like, all these guys, Ja has, Desmond Bain has, Jaren Jackson has, like, the core of their team, like, this isn't their first rodeo at this point. So I do think you can start to give them I don't agree with John Morant that they're entirely just gonna cakewalk through the West. I think the West is wide open this year. I agree with that. Like, Memphis could very well win the West, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they are that good, and to that extent, Josh should talk his talk. Like, they're in first right now. You're right. Absolutely. Everybody's chasing them. You got to talk when you're at the top of the mountain. Um, I think Denver is too good. And I think that Golden State is going to be better. I think the Clippers, as they get healthy a little bit, still should be right there.
it's such a
Even New Orleans to an extent, like they're not going to cakewalk. They're not that much better than everybody.
it's such a weird phenomenon. Like you look at the Western Conference and one, two, three teams have 19 wins, but only two of them, like they haven't played the same amount of games. So it's like a weird situation where like the Suns have 19 wins, but they're in fourth. Pelicans have or have 18 wins. They're in third, obviously on this losing streak. Then you've got like the Clippers who have 18 wins. They're starting to pick it back up a little bit. In fifth, but then you got the Jazz with 18 wins, but also 16 losses in eighth place. So it's such like when you just look at it, it like looks like off. Something doesn't look right, you know?
Well, I think it's also the fact too that, and again, even with Cleveland to an extent, maybe it just feels like the top teams at the East that their peaks have been higher. if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like the way that we've seen them play so far, I think the fact that, they've both been on finals runs, Milwaukee winning the title a few years ago, Boston getting to the finals last year and looking like they have a good shot of getting right back. So I understand that thinking in the way that, other than Golden State, but Phoenix has made a finals run too. But I mean, I'm with like I kind of get that token though. The part of me is like, well, how come isn't everybody giving Phoenix their respect? They just made that run. The other part of me is like, I don't think Phoenix deserves that. And that's somebody who
Yeah.
was beating the hell out of the Phoenix from last year after they won 64. I just at the end of the day, like I still have that sour taste in my mouth. I've seen them lose a couple close games this year, and the reality is until I see them get back into the playoffs, it is going to be kind of prove it mode with Phoenix for me, for
Yeah.
better or for worse.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also put it in perspective. I mean, Nuggets, Grizzlies, Suns, they have 19 wins. That's good enough to be tied with the Nets for 4th place in the East right now, which is always surprising when we have to compare that because it's usually the opposite with the West being so
Well,
much stronger.
yeah, it traditionally it's always been. I mean, in our
Yeah.
lifetimes, specifically, even just really the past 20 years,
Yeah.
um, since the turn of the millennium, that the West has always been better than the East. Like every single, and you would have Eastern teams that have won the title. Like we've seen it with, Detroit's won, Miami's won, Cleveland winning with LeBron. Like there have
Mhm.
been Toronto even a few years ago. Like there have been what or Eastern Conference teams that have won before. But yeah, I mean, it was always the bottom of it, right? It was always that 6, 7, 8 range where you would just get these 500 squads that kind of creep in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess you get that across the board now with the play-in games, but it's like, you look at 1 through 8 in the Eastern Conference right now, and we said this even going into the season, there's nobody there that stinks. Like, there are a couple teams that you maybe could argue would be average, but it's not the 1-8 blowout. Like, even if I get a Milwaukee or like Miami is 8 right now, Atlanta's 7.
Yeah.
I think Milwaukee, Boston would win those matchups. I think Cleveland would win a 3-6 matchup if it was the Knicks right now. But I don't think they're going to be just these ridiculous sweeps by any means. Like they're going to be competitive games.
Yeah. I agree. And that's we'll have to see that when we get down the line. The last game on the slate, again, I think I agree with you. Number 2 on the most intriguing list is Phoenix Suns versus Denver Nuggets. Both teams, like we just talked about, at the top of the Western Conference, currently tied in the win category. And Jokic is just going off right now. So,
That Jokic game was so ridiculous the other night
the
against the Hornets.
passes,
Like, I
they've
know they
like
played the Hornets, but like you had 40 and 27 and
yeah,
what was it, 11 or 12 assists? Like the fact that he put that, I mean, anytime your stats are next to Wilt, which I always love that everyone goes anytime they get in a Wilt stat, it's like, yeah, Wilt did that like 7 times.
yeah.
Um, where nobody's done it since then. But no, Jokic is just absolutely out. Like Jokic to me, how spicy do we want to get? I think he's
Mm.
a lot closer to 1 than closer to 10 if we're ranking our individual
Well, yeah.
players. Like,
Yeah.
I think he might be 3 right now.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't argue it. I mean, the dude is cooking. Some of the passes that I saw on ESPN the other night, like a through the legs pass, a no
Yeah,
look to the
yep, yep,
side
yep.
cutting pass. Like, come on, that's just not fair.
Well, they're just healthy finally. Like, it's good to see them. Like, we talk about them the past few years. It's been like, yeah, they're good. They're fun to watch. Jokic is great, but they
Yeah,
basically had a hard ceiling where now I'm like, no, they don't have a hard ceiling. They could win the whole thing as far as I'm concerned.
yeah.
I'm really again, it's the late game, so everybody will be staying up. But I mean, you know me, I've been a big Nuggets guy for a while. Like I think they're one of the most enjoyable teams to watch. I'm excited for that matchup. And again, with Phoenix, like these are the type of games that I want to see Phoenix win, right? Like if you want me to trust you and to earn that back, like I want to see you beat the Nuggets on Christmas. Like that when the intensity is raised a little bit, like I want to see it turned up.
Well, and I'll kind of transition to us with what I think we can end with here. I don't think they get it done. I think Denver wins that one.
It's in Denver, right?
I hold on, I can look, but
I think it's in Denver. Like, I'm gonna give the home team the benefit of the doubt there. Like, I'm gonna say Denver as well in a close one. Um, I've got
see, hold
Memphis
on.
over Golden State. I've got Boston winning on their home floor against Milwaukee. I've got Dallas over the Lakers, and I've got the Sixers just barely. I'm going to be a homer over the Knicks, but that game's going to be close. Like I can see the Knicks winning that game.
All right, I think I'm pretty similar. I got Mavs. I've got Knicks. I'm gonna go Knicks. I'm gonna give them their 10-game win streak.
They're at home. I get it.
I'm gonna go Nuggets. I'm gonna go Grizz, and I'm gonna go Bucks.
Okay. I mean, look, there's no one where I'm really hard pressed. Like Bucks Celtics is a toss up to me.
Yeah,
I'm hoping they bring it. Like that game is the one that I'm excited to watch because I think that has, like, depending on how the West shakes out, like that could very well be a finals s quality series if that's
yeah.
how the conference finals ends up going. So I'm definitely excited. That's my number one for sure. But this is an overall, like, I don't have too much of a beef with this slate. I would have it. I guess if there's anybody that got snubbed at this point, because you can't adjust it, like that's the problem.
Right, right,
I
right.
would love to see if you're going to add another Eastern team. I'd love to see Cleveland there. Take the Sixers out, take the Knicks out. I think either one of those, if you want to swap with Cleveland. Out west, you've got Denver, you've got Memphis, you've got Phoenix. Obviously, I would say swap the Lakers or the Mavericks, honestly, given their performance this year. If you were going to add somebody, add the Pels, add the Clippers. Honestly, as sacrilegious as it sounds, add the Kings. Like, listen,
Beam
I know
team.
we're a long way from the Beam team getting on Christmas. I don't think the NBA is at that quite at that level yet of recognition. But I mean, if we're going down statistically, the standings and who's ranked where they are right now, like Beam team is higher than both Dallas and the Lakers, and not by
Yeah.
a slim margin.
No. I mean, 16-3. They're cooking. I kind of agree with you. I mean, look, at the end of the day, maybe they could have justified a Clippers thing, just because there was a lot of hype about the team being finally healthy. But
And the Pels are a lock next year.
yeah, oh
Like the
yeah,
Pels are the lock of the century to be on Christmas next year.
unless unless a major injury, and I never want to wish that on anybody.
I don't even
So
think it. I think the schedule makers, like, as long as the Pelicans finish this season healthy, I think they'll be a lock to be on
I'm
next year. And I think
I'm
even if it's
yeah,
not, like, depending who, like, let me just, like, if it's not Zion, I think they'll be on Christmas next
yeah,
year. Like if it's CJ McCollum or Brandon Ingram, God forbid, like they go down, and I'm not rooting for anybody to go down. Like I'm knocking on all the wood right now for the
right, right.
Pelicans. Um, that I think they still would, just off the star power of Zion, to put it bluntly. I also, the other sleeper, and you can't quantify this yet, but it's gonna be whoever has Wembanyama. Like whoever has Wembanyama could very well be on Christmas next year.
You think for rookie year?
Dude, the hype on, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
man, nobody's been hyped like him in a long time. And we've seen a lot of prospects, but like I think he probably already is the biggest hype prospect since LeBron. And like that's not a light. I mean, because
Yeah.
Zion was right there. Like
Well, that's
Zion
what
was
I
one
was
of the
gonna
most
look
hyped
up.
players coming out in a long time.
Did they schedule Pelicans Christmas Day on Zion's rookie year? And I know there was injuries and stuff like that, but I'd have to go look. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. What was that? 2020?
Yeah. Zion.
We had a pandemic, or no? I guess we did
Was
have a
that
pandemic
rookie?
then. At that point,
Was
I
that
think that
was
was his
that
rookie. I think that was his rookie year. Was it 2020 or 2019?
2019 for first overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft. Yes. So and he was named to the NBA All Rookie First Team in 2020.
Oh, the Pelicans were on that year. They were. They played the
Were
Heat
they?
that year.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So then, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I,
no,
I would.
Wemby's the lock
Yeah.
then too, wherever Wemby's at.
Yeah.
So shout out to, let's see. Um, who do we got? San Antonio. Everyone's saying San Antonio just because of Tim Duncan, but San Antonio, Houston, Oklahoma City, Detroit, Charlotte. I mean, maybe Orlando. I don't think Orlando's going to be there. I could see Washington being there too.
I really want him to end up on the Thunder. I think that would be wild.
Wemby and Chet Holmgren is so bizarre. Like
That's
that
what I
would be
mean.
so weird, man.
And you got Giddy and dude, like it's just the weirdest young core. I would love it.
I think the fit wise, in terms of
Spurs.
who has the most right, no,
Oh,
honestly, like
Rockets.
no, I want the Pistons, dude. I want Cade and Wemby. Cade and Wemby
Yeah.
would be outrageous. LaMelo and Wemby would be crazy too if he's on Charlotte.
Yeah, but like rosters, don't they have? They got Green. I don't know. Like I feel
Oh no,
like
the Rockets are probably more.
yeah,
I don't want to say they're
Jabari
more
Smith.
complete, but they got some guys too for
But,
sure.
like
Like
yeah,
yeah,
you got
you got Jalen
Green
Green,
and
Jabari
Smith,
Smith,
and then you put
Şengün.
Wemby down low. Like Yeah.
Wemby and Şengün is a pretty good, like, big men duo.
Yeah.
And
I
you
don't
and they
know,
can
I
play
kinda
that's
like
the
that.
crazy part is that could work because Wemby could play inside out. Oh my god, I can't believe like, that's crazy. The fact that I'm like, "Yo, that he can just play inside out. He's 7'3". Like, whatever, it's
Yeah.
fine. It's not a
He'll
big
be
deal.
fine. It'll be
Thank
like
you
a bowl, we'll see that every single freaking day.
Bol, man, what a we'll have a longer we did a little bit last week, but, like, what a remarkable turnaround for Bol. Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys as always. Happy Hanukkah, everybody out there who's I think we're on day 3, I believe, of Hanukkah as a recording this episode. But that'll be going over the weekend. Merry Christmas to everybody. Enjoy all the hoops out there. Happy Kwanzaa to everybody who's starting that the next day. Justin and I will be back after the holidays, getting you ready for New Year's. I haven't talked about this with you, but like we can preview this. Like it's going to be New Year's resolutions, right? Like that's always kind
Yeah.
of the reset, check where we're at. It'll probably be split over two, because that's usually just how it goes, given how the conferences are. So we'll see as we're recording. It's kind of one of those things. But seriously, we hope everybody has a great holiday. We are appreciative of all of you. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. Anywhere you can find a podcast, we're there. If you got to like sneak out and you don't feel like hanging out with your family, throw us in. We got an hour for you. All the injury news is on last episode, by the way, which you're 46 minutes in. If you were looking for that, yeah,
Too late.
I think you might have figured out that you might be out of luck at this point. But
Yeah.
definitely go check that out if you're looking for any of that as well.
Yep, and find the video version of the podcast. Feel free to give us a subscription on YouTube. Just search Driving Dish NBA.